is pretty much what I came up with at the end today. So, like, this is pretty much for AOC on Woobly. I didn't do the expansions because there's still a lot of unclear shit about the expansions. So yeah, this is the Arena 1v1 tier list. It's pretty much based overall, like not, typical matchups. It's pretty much based overall how the civilizations play out versus all of the rest civilizations, and it is pretty much meant for showing like how the civilizations vary on each tier and how different they are and their attributes and so on, so on, so on. Right? So this is plainly for the purpose of kind of putting the civilizations in the tier, thus in all these random versus random matches and so on, so you can have a little bit better understanding which civ should win. So now I'm gonna go over each tier and explain why they're in where they are, or why they're like there where they are. So first we have tier 0, which is Aztecs and Mayans. So these are the both Age of Empires Conqueror's Pack Meso civs. And the reason I think that they're tier 0 because, as we know, Aztecs have the best monks, the strongest, the tankiest monks, right? So that's really good as well. And the thing is that both of these civs have Eagle Warriors, which are really good for map control, which are really good for dealing versus monks. They're kind of like scout cavalry, but you don't counter them with spears, which is a really good advantage. And Aztecs just plays really good against a lot of civs, honestly. That's what I'm gonna say. Because first of all, if you want to boom versus Aztecs, if you give Aztecs 4 relics, for example, the game is already almost, I mean, not literally, but it's half of it, it's decided right there, because Aztecs have the unique gold bonus, the 33% faster gold from relics, and with 4 relics, that's like 100% pretty much faster, even more than 100%, right? So what happens is, if you give 4 relics to Aztecs, the game is already so much in favor of them that even if you have a superior Imperial civ, it's going to be so hard to deal with. First of all, their monks, right? Second of all, they can go Eagles. They have the extra gold, right? They also have Onager and Siege Onager versus these Archer civs or whatnot. So even though they lack cavalry, their Imperial game is strong enough, and the map control that they get in Castle Age with their strong monks and their Eagle Warriors puts them in tier 0, because there are not a lot of civs who can battle against this monk plus eagle powerhouse in the Castle Age, and not a lot of civs who can catch up in the Imperial Age, right? And so that's why the reason they are there, right? Like, everybody knows they're top tier civs, so I don't think that there's going to be much argument there, right? The reason Mayans are in here as well, but the reason Mayans are not in tier 1 but is in tier 0, because first of all, Mayans have Eagle Warriors. None of these civs in tier 1 have Eagle Warriors. That already puts them a lot better, because they are a lot better versus all Win Monk civs. And second of all, Plumes is such a cost efficient unit. It's so cheap, it's fast, it's very mobile, it's tanky, it can survive mangonel shots, it's good against monks because you can snipe them off really easily. And also, Mayans have an amazing economy, as we know. Like, they can do a lot of stuff, barely having 60, 70, even 50 villagers, right? Because of their economy bonus, which is just completely amazing. That's why I want to put them in tier 0, because I think that they are a lot better than these civs, just because of how they play out and the access to Eagle Warriors and Plumes, which is just an amazing Castle Age unit. Thus, again, Mayans are the civ that will most likely get a lot of relics in the Castle Age, because not a lot of civs can battle the Plume Archer, and and in close maps it's really good because you can do a lot of damage versus other unique unit civs, because Mayan Plumes pretty much can deal with conquistadors, can deal with even Turks, can deal even with Turks, like, pretty okay-ish, I would say, and can deal with Chinese and all of these guys. Even with Brits and crossbowmen, they still can outmaneuver them with the speed advantage. right? So let me just put chat here if you see me talking to chat so you're not thinking what is happening. Turks versus Mayans, Turks win, right? I think Mayans will win Turks because Turks are just so slow, and like when Turks shoot you can just split and go back because Mayan speed, and then you just outrun him and you just snipe him off really easily. Janissaries are not good versus even crossbowmen, like not that good versus crossbowmen. They're okay obviously, but they have some trouble. They typically win just because of the range advantage, but the boom speed negates that one range advantage quite nicely. So next we have, oh man, next we have tier 1, which is Byzantine, Spanish, and Turks. So the reason I put these guys here is because Turks pretty much are almost non-contested, except maybe you could say the actual Mayans. Uncontested in the Castle Age because Janissaries having 8 range can deal with absolutely everything in the Castle Age, with monks, with mangonels, with Spanish, conquistadors, whatever these civs can throw at them. Turks can pretty much deal with everything, that's why they are here, right? And also, Turks having the access to free chemistry and having the fast bombard cannons allows them to just outpush a lot of the civs also, and having the free Hussar upgrade as well allows for a really fast-paced army composition in my opinion. And since their Castle Age is so strong, it allows for almost a full map control in Castle Age if played correctly, followed up by pretty much you deciding what you want to do in the game. And considering a lot of the times the maps decide how you want to play, Turk allows for this flexibility. If you want to do one town center push, maybe castle, like full Castle Age, Janissaries, Knights, whatever. And the thing is about their Imperial, it's really fast. You don't need chemistry, so you kind of just get ahead of other bombard cannon civs, and you can just overwhelm before they can even do much and just play full map control and just push really hard. Spanish, the thing about Spanish, again, having the access to the unique units. Let me just make this like this. Okay, so this is gonna be a lot better. So Spanish, a little bit worse than Turks in my opinion, and better as well, because Spanish conquistadors have a lot better time versus Knights, which is really good Turk counter. We like you see. For example, if one guy's doing fast input Turks, you can see the other guy going full Castle Age Knights and so on. And Conquistadors allowing the extra speed is really good against that. And also the speed helps you outmaneuver mangonels, but the biggest Conquistador minus would be that they do die to monks in small numbers quite easily, unlike the Janissaries, which only have 1 range less than the monks. But Spanish still being a really good civilization, having the 50% faster building really allows them to get their castles a little bit up faster. Obviously, that's not a big thing, but it still helps. And the biggest reason why they as well are good, same with Turks, they have really good monks. They even have better monks. They have max already monks. So they can even go monks versus other civs who are going monks instead of conquistadors. So that also helps a lot, because they're really flexible in that state. And their Imperial Age is also really good, having access to bomber cannons, having access to Hussar, skirmishers, halberdier, and cannoneers, and so on. That's why I put them up here, because they just have like almost every matchup for them is somehow winnable and somehow is good, right? And the third tier 1 is Byzantines. And the only reason I put them in tier 1, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons, they have, again, good monks, they have access to heresy and so on. And what makes Byzantine so special is that they have the cheap skirmisher and the cheap trash in general, cheap skirmisher halberdier, also have access to Hussar, so they're really good against monks because you can go heresy and just spam those cheap skirmishers and so on. And also they're they're cheaper Imperial, allows them for much more flexible decisions in random 1v1 match, for example, versus somebody who could overwhelm them in Imperial, let's say like maybe Celts or something like that. You can just go for this fast Imperial monk plus castle or whatever you decide to do push. And that's why I think that they are tier 1 instead of tier 1.5 as all the other civs mentioned below. because they and also a really important thing, cataphracts do really wonders against a lot of the infantry civs down below, and that's why it's really important to put them in here, because even though cataphracts are not the typical unit you see versus these civs, you can still go with them, like let's say Goths, Celts, even maybe Vikings on some situations. You can go for these cataphracts, which are really good. That's why I think Byzantines are a really good choice, and they play out really nicely against a lot of civs. So now we have tier 1.5, which has a little bit more civilizations, which is pretty much Japanese, Chinese, Saracen, Teutons, Britons. So Japanese, a really good civ, really good civ. The reason they're not not tier 1 is because they lack heresy, which is really important in Monk Wars. And I really dislike them lacking heresy. That's why I don't think they're that good. Even though they have really good choices, they can go Halberdier Rams, Onagers, Arbalest. They can go their Imperial Monks, but they're not as good as tier 1 civs because they don't have heresy, and you don't have a good way of dealing with mass monks with heresy. So for example, Japanese versus Byzantine monk wars, Byzantine will always have the edge because of the heresy. That's why Japanese 1.5. Chinese 1.5. So Chinese is a little bit worse already than Japanese, but the reason I don't put them in tier 2.0 is because they have... Oh, sorry about that. Because they have really nice access to cheap technologies, so they're a little bit more flexible on 2-town center and even 1-town center, because cheap onagers, also monk upgrades cheap. The reason they're not tier 1 is because first of all their imperial monks are not that good. They lack block printing, which is really important, but they pay up for that with having Chukono, which is a really good unit in a lot of situations versus a lot of civilizations. And the cheap technology allows them to access Onager and maybe siege ram a lot faster than other civs. So next civilization, Saracen, again a really good civ, really good monks. This actually has a really good monk civ, but they're a little bit bigger weakness on them is that they don't offer anything else to the table, like anything special to the table, except good monks, right? So you could argue that they're better than Japanese, but the thing about that is that Japanese have really good halberdier, right? They also can do a lot more damage. A lot more damage having their market abuse, right? So you can do a lot more flexible strats than the Japanese, again on 1-town center and 2-town center. But their biggest weakness is that they don't really have anything else to offer that's unique, right? And yeah, obviously, as I'm saying, Saracen is good because no heresy. I already said Japanese is not that good because of no heresy, but just them being able to spam helps, which are a lot stronger. And yeah, I think that's really okay. But yeah, Saracens just don't offer anything unique to the table. Japanese, you could argue the same, but Japanese do have really flexible builds. Saracens, not so much. You kind of just want to go either camels, heavy camo if you're going for units, or you want to go for Arbalest plus champion, something like that. So next one, Teutons. Again, an amazing civilization, but their biggest strength being the more resistant units to monks only works really good against monk civs, really good against monk civs, and that's why they're not tier 1, because not a lot of civs are monk civs, and Teutons not really offering anything else to the table other than Franks and Persians, right? In a way, they're pretty similar to Franks and Persians. So their biggest strength is actually having those extra monks, right? Those good monks that they have. That's why they're up here and not down there, obviously. But they're not tier 1 because their biggest strength is actually against monk civs instead of any other civs. Obviously, they still are really strong civ, but again, they're really situational. Their advantage really kicks in situationally more than anything else. So about them, they're really good. They have a good economy. They also have, again, those resistant monks, and they have a lot of flexible strategies you can go depending on the matchup. That's why they're pretty much tier 1.5. But the reason they're not tier 1 is because, again, they don't offer much on the table except monks or Imperial Army. So next one is Britons, right? And there was a lot of arguments. There was a lot of argument about this. Not a lot, but few between me and Meadow. Meadow said that they're tier 1. I actually put them in tier 2, and then I decided to put them in tier 1.5 because their biggest strength is their crossbows are really strong, so they kind of deal with monks pretty nicely in the Castle Age. So they are a lot they are a lot stronger in the Castle Age versus monk civs, and they kind of deal with monk civs really nicely. But their biggest weakness is they die versus a lot of civs who just have really good tools to deal with the archers. And since they lack siege ram as well, it's really hard to ram war with them. Also, they really don't offer much to the table except archers and pretty much infantry, which is pretty mediocre as well because you kind of want to go archers with them, right? But like if you're versus gods, you're forced to go champions, and then you just get overwhelmed by champions, huskarls, and cannoneers, for example, right? For example. And that happens versus a lot of civilizations. That's why Britons is not, tier 1. They are really the only civ in this tier 1.5 who are without good monks. And the only reason that they are here is because their crossbows having the extra range allows for a really good monk snipe. And again, they're really good against a lot of monk civs. They are good against some Imperial civs. I think they play okay versus these Halberdier HG BBC civ. I think it just comes down a lot to the micro if you can snipe the bomber cannons and such, because 12 range is a lot and bomber cannons don't have that big range. So that's why they're here. So next one is tier 2.0, tier 2, which is Celts, Goths, Koreans, and Mongols. So Celts, obviously, they don't have very good monks, so that's why they're not higher, but they have really good Imperial game. They have really good Castle Age siege. So versus a non-redemption monk civ, they can do a lot of damage. A lot of damage with their extra Mangonel speed, which is not big, but it really helps. Also having really good units against any archer civ at all, and even a weak infantry civ, Void Raiders do really well against. Also having the 50% stronger unique tech on the siege helps a lot in White Imperial. That's why they are up so high, because their Imperial is amazing, but their Castle Age is really needs to be really good so you don't fall behind, because they require quite a strong boom, I would say, to get their powerhouse out. So again, it really depends on the map and how you decide to play them out. And next one we have Gods, and Gods being an amazing civ because they don't require that much eco to be able to spam a lot of champions because they are really cheap. So they do well against any other infantry civ just because of pure value, even though their champions are not the strongest. Value-wise, they are the best because you can just mass them like crazy. Also, they have access to Halberdier, HC, and Bomber Cannon, so they are okay versus other infantry civs because they can add HC if they want and stuff like that. Their actual biggest weakness is that they die really easily to a lot of aggressive 1TC or 2TC monks and so on, because they don't have access to walls. They don't have access to good to stone walls, and they don't have access to good monks. So they really don't have much tools to deal with really strong aggressions. So that's why they are only in tier 2, and I think that they still are a good civ because, again, you can even do 2-town center army if needed. That's why they're up here, because their economy, even though they don't have much economy bonus, their Imperial later on cuts in really nice on the whole value and the whole access to extra resources and such. So Koreans are here because one of the main reasons they're here, because their Mangonels have +1 range, which pretty much puts them versus non-redemption monk civs. It puts them way above almost anything, you could say. because their mangonels can pretty much deal with any other mangonels you micro properly. So their combination of mangonels plus even Castle Age spikes is already so deadly. And since they have the fast stone mining, they're a lot flexible on castle dropping and such. By that I mean, for example, if you get attacked, they can get their castles on defense down a lot faster, so they're not that bad. Also, they have the extra towers, which helps versus monks really a lot. The extra free tower upgrades, I mean. So that's also very important. That's why they're so good against monk civs, because you can just place towers and those 8-range mangonels behind the towers, and almost every monk push will be stopped. And their Imperial game is quite good, having access to Halberdier and Hand Cannoneer and Bombard Cannons. And as we know, if you want to go, you can go Siege Onager or Onager, which for them is really good because their Onager is 8+3 max upgraded, for example, which is just amazing. That's why they are up here. Their weaknesses, I would say, they don't really have a lot of eco bonuses. So if they don't get ahead, they might just go really far behind. That's why there are a lot of civs who can overwhelm them and just push and try to play on them not being able to counter and be cost efficient or be fast enough and so on. Next we have Mongols, and this is where a lot of people will think that Mongols is like, why is Mongols not tier 1 or tier 1.5 at least? And I will tell you why, because they're so slow compared to a lot of other civs. And we know Arena is very, very important about speed, and Mongols is pretty much all around Mangandai based civilization, right? So there are a lot of civilizations who can take advantage of this speed and deny the castles from Mongols that they need, and that allows Mongols to just that makes Mongols just so much less usable in a lot of flexible situations. So that's why they're only here, because again, they do really bad against very aggressive civilizations who pretty much aim to take down your castles and such. Their biggest strengths, obviously, their Imperial game is amazing, their hunting bonus is amazing. They have really good access to a lot of good units like Mangandai, Siege Onager, Siege Rams, Hussar. Those are really good units. But it's just that without Mangandai, their whole composition is kind of mediocre in a way. It just goes down really fast without those Mangandais. That's why they're only tier 2, because having that one key unit in a composition can be really bad. For example, Britons can go Longbowman and Arbalist, right? Each are okay. Mongols can go Mangandai, it's pretty much it, right? Going Arbalist with them is really just not good. Like, it's just not good. It just makes them a mediocre Arbalist at best, right? So that's why Mongols are tier 2, right? So now, next we have tier 2.5, which is Huns and Vikings. So the reason Huns are on 2.5 is just because their Imperial game is not strong. Their Imperial game is just not strong. They don't have access to a lot of tools, which pretty much completely kills them off. Even though they have really good economy, they have access to cavalry archers, which are really cheap. They have access to paladin, but those are not good units in Arena. They're not bad units, but they're not good units. In Arena, it plays out a little bit different. For example, you almost never want to go Paladin in a 1v1, right? It's just not good, because most civs have access to Halberdier, and they will just completely murder you, right? And going Paladin plus Cavalry Archer is just a so expensive combo to get all the upgrades and everything done, and then that just puts them so behind, and they become such a slow civilization compared to most, right? And even then, so much stuff can counter them, like Onager plus Halberdier pretty much is like already such a good counter to them. Also, they don't have access to redemption, which really makes their monks kind of not that strong. Even though their monks are not that bad, because you have access to atonement, it still puts them a little bit behind other monk civs. But they have so Phoenix says they have helms plus siege ram too. Yep, exactly, they do. But again, they don't have anything to put that with, right? So they still die to so much other civilizations who have access to that, plus something else, like HC, even Bob BBC or something like that, right? So Han's biggest strength, I think, comes in their actual Castle Age or early Imperial, because their actual economy is really strong and you can do a lot of damage. Also, Castle Age Knights plus Cavalry Archer can actually do a lot of damage versus other civilizations. But still, Han's remains really, really slow, either weak or slow. Either one of those works in Imperial, and they just do really bad against a lot of civs out there. And next one we have Vikings, which is obviously an okay civ, have really good economy, just amazing economy. But the thing with Vikings is that first of all, they have only pretty much two options in Imperial. First one being Arbalest plus Rams or Onager, and the second one being Berserker plus Onager, and Rams and obviously Trebuchets. So depends on the situations. But what happens with this is that first of all, they don't have access to good monks. So again, they're kind of not exactly a one-trick pony, but they are kind of limited in the Castle Age because again, they don't have access to bloodlines. So full Knight push also is not as good, and full Castle Age push with crossbow just doesn't work obviously. And the reason they're so good is because they can use their fast Imperial and just completely stomp a lot of the civs. But again, if they don't do that, they kind of fall behind because they're not the strongest post-Imperial civilization out there, right? So, for example, if you go Arbalists, you get a good Imperial, you go Arbalist plus Rams, for example, and you don't push the damage, you will most likely get pushed back by pretty much any civ, almost, pretty much most civs, let's say that. And also, they don't have access to Halberdier, which is really important because they have hard time dealing with mass cavalry. And for example, if you do that fast Imperial and you go Berserkers, obviously Berserkers need a stronger eco, so that economy, the bonus economy you have with them, the amazing economy, pretty much makes them still a typical Imperial civ, because to get their best combo, which would be Berserker plus Onager, still requires so much resources, right? That's why they're only 2.5, because they just don't do enough versus so much civs, and they're really dependent on that 1 or 2 minutes faster Imperial window to do everything they need to do. And tier 3 being Franks and Persians. The reason these civs are here because they offer only one thing to the whole game. They offer HC plus Bombard Cannon plus Halberdier, which is the only thing they actually can offer. They don't have good monks. They don't have access to anything unique in their castles. Obviously, offense is just bad, and throwing axemen gets countered by too much, really. So the reason, so typically, like, Franks are better than Persians because they have access to Siege Onager, but obviously I'm not going to put Franks in tier 3 and Persians in tier 4 because they both have some eco bonuses. Persians actually have good eco. Franks having the free meal upgrades also helps them a lot helps them in the economy. The biggest, their biggest strengths is that with these civs going scout build is actually really good for map control. Well, Persians don't have Siege Onager as well, Phoenix. But again, their Imperial is so one-dimensional because if you go Paladin versus most civs, going to be really bad because almost everything has access to some kind of paladin counter, except maybe Vikings, right? But that's one civ from all of these. That's why Franks and Persians are in the tier 3, because they just don't, they're just too one-dimensional, really. And they don't have a lot of flexibility on their strategy because you always need to kind of reach Imperial. I guess their biggest strengths would be Castle Age Night Push, but there are just so much civs who do that better. Even Huns have better Night Push in the Castle Age. For example, Chinese also have better Night Push in the Castle Age. So that's why these civs are here, and they're really, obviously they're not bad against certain things. For example, versus Gods, they could be okay. But again, overall, versus all the other civs, they just do really poor, and they're too one-dimensional to compete in the with these top tier civs. So like tier 1, tier 0, tier 1, tier 1.5. They just literally can't compete with these civs. So that is going to be the 1v1 arena tier list for the Conquerors expansions. If actually, if like you guys want to see expansion one, just hit me up or something, because at the moment I don't plan on making one, because I don't honestly think that so much people are going to be interested in it, because as we know, a lot of people play on Woobly, and then there's the guys who play on HD without the new expansions, and so on, so on, so on. So I decided to make the Conquerors alone and don't mix it up with the expansions, so it doesn't get confusing and all of that, because there are just too much civs if you mix in the expansions, and the tier list just gets a lot more messy. So this is going to be Arena 1v1 tier list, guys. If you have any constructive criticism, just hit me up or write in the comments or whatever. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. So yeah, this will be it for today, guys. See ya.